Good afternoon, South Carolina Realtors. This is the June 20th, 2025, 1 p.m. Byron King, Chief Legal Officer. In the past, we've educated about the wire fraud scams using Form 610, the fake seller scams using your forewarn app as a defense and risk management on that. Today, we're honored with two special agents from United States Secret Service, Special Agent Tiffany Lohr and Special Agent Alan Otterson. Tiffany's going to cover the pig butchering crypto scam, and Alan's going to cover the business email compromise scams that are involved in some of these crimes and what they're doing to defend it. And if you have any questions, please put those into the chat. We'll try to cover those during the first portion and at the end. And if you have some questions that are outside of that, contact South Carolina Association of Realtors at 803-772-5206, or email is info@screaltors.org. Tiffany, I'll turn it over to you. If you could introduce yourself, talk about what your investigations look like so the realtors learn a little bit about what you do every day, and promoting the www.ic3.gov website. Thanks for helping us today.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Tiffany Lohr. I'm a special agent with the United States Secret Service. I've been with the service for the past 8 years. I work in the Global Investigation Operations Center out of our headquarters, and I primarily focus on cryptocurrency investment scams, commonly known as pig butchering. And like Byron said, you definitely, if you find yourself or a relative or anyone you know for that matter being a victim of one of these scams, we do encourage you to go to ic3.gov to file a complaint, as well as cryptofraud@usss.dhs.gov, which that email address will appear on my last slide, so you don't need to write it down. But anytime you find yourself being a victim of a cyber crime, you should always report it. That ic3.gov website will allow you to put in information and details about the scam that you've been a victim of, and then that information is available later for individuals to research and archive. It's been very beneficial for our cryptocurrency investigation we're currently working that's been targeting real estate agents. And I'll go into that a little bit more in depth in a few minutes, as well as the type of information you should be including when you file those complaints. So today I'm just going to talk to you because we've had a large uptick, probably since about November of 2024, of real estate agents contacting us reporting that they've been victims of cryptocurrency investment scams, also known as pig butchering. It's called pig butchering because it is viewed that the scammers fatten up the victims before slaughter. Now, these are highly sophisticated crimes. They are not conducted by an individual. It's normally a large network that has infinite resources. There are call centers that operate with individuals that are used for 24-hour customer service. They sit around and their sole job for the day is to contact people and try and get them to invest funds into these scams. Now, normally these scams are carried out by individuals reaching out via Facebook, random text messages from unknown numbers. It could be targeting through LinkedIn. The way that it's linked to real estate agents is these individuals are contacting real estate agents through their platforms. They're stating that they want to purchase a home in cash. Normally it's a house that would probably be $1 million or more. They're going to show you proof of documentation, but that's how they're getting started with the real estate agents. And one thing will lead to another in these cases. But these are the standard steps that occur within a pig butchering scam. There's going to be the initial contact. That's when the scammer is reaching out to you or someone you know in your field through their realtor platform, inquiring about that house. They're going to try and set up a trust with you. They're going to tell you that they're an investor in cryptocurrency, that they've made a large profit off of their own investments. They may even show you photos of their accounts showing large amounts of money in those accounts. They may show you, bank statements and other things. All of those are fictitious. They are eventually going to build up enough trust that they feel comfortable in directing you to a spoof domain. That domain could be based off of a legitimate cryptocurrency platform. The name may be very similar, but the domain may be off by one letter, one number, something like that. But they're going to refer you to a specific site. If you have no knowledge of cryptocurrency whatsoever, they're going to tell you to go to Coinbase and set up an account, or maybe Kraken or another legitimate platform. These are legitimate, and you are purchasing cryptocurrency when you go to those sites. However, once the scammer asks you to transfer funds to a specific address or to go and put your information in on this spoof domain site, that's where things are becoming illegitimate and illegal at that point. It's all fraudulent after you start using that domain that they give you. And once you transfer the funds out of your legitimate account at Coinbase or Kraken or whatever platform you're using. Now, these scammers are highly sophisticated, like I said, and they do not target individuals that are savvy in cryptocurrency. Sometimes they will, but more often than not, they want someone that isn't very savvy in cryptocurrency. So they will actually coach you every step of the way on what you need to do. I have had individuals that have actually given remote access to their computers so that the scammers could do it because the individual was not tech savvy and was unable to accomplish all of the steps on their own. But in most cases, the scammers can talk the average individual through each step of the way of creating the accounts, of transferring the money. And then once you start transferring money into these accounts, it's going to look like there's going to be a return on your investment. Just know that there is never a guaranteed return on a cryptocurrency investment. So if you're talking to individuals and they're telling you that you can make, 15, 20% return on your investment in a specific period of time, that is more than likely not a legitimate crypto trader, investor person that you're dealing with, because they can never promise you any type of return on your investment. Another thing that you can look for is these individuals are going to start pressuring you. If you make a small investment and it looks like you're getting a return on your investment, they're going to pressure you to invest more and more. It will come to a point where they're asking you to take out a loan in order to put more into your investment. And some people may find it hard to believe that individuals fall victims to these scams, but like I said, they're very elaborate. These domains are created to look like real trading platforms. You can see on the screen, it's set up to show highs and lows within a market. That's all fictitious. It's all made up. So when people are logging into these sites, it's showing the return on their investment. And another tactic that these scammers will utilize is they will say that you have to trade at a specific period of time. And they pretend that they know when that time will be. And they tell you, don't ever trade without me. I will tell you exactly when to do it. Those are all indications that it is part of a scam. And these sites are set up with customer service tabs. So there's 24-hour customer service on most of these platforms. Another thing that you will see with these scammers is they may have 10 to 15 domains set up identical at any given time. One may be Cointree VIP, one may be Cointree exec.com. It just depends, but a lot of the time they will be running multiple domains at any given time. So you want to keep that in mind. So you may start out at cointreeexec.com, and throughout the process, you may be able to withdraw small amounts of money. Normally, the scammer is going to try and direct you of how much you want to withdraw. So if you say, oh, I want to make sure this isn't a scam, I'm going to do a withdrawal. They'll be like, oh, okay. And then they're going to try and control that amount. They'll be like, oh, you only want to take out $500 right now because you don't want to mess with your investment. That'll really hurt you in the long run if you take out too much. And then you'll make that smaller withdrawal and it'll work out fine. Then they'll encourage you to put more in and you'll put more in. And then ultimately, you're going to want to make a large withdrawal. At that point, the scammers will tell you that your account has been frozen. You either need to pay some form of tax on that money or you can't access it, or they'll come up with something stating that you need to provide proof of identification because it's such a large withdrawal. They'll ask you to send in copies of your passport, your driver's license. And I'll tell you in a minute why they are asking for that information, but they're going to tell you need to do that. And then they're going to say, well, it's still frozen. And in order to verify, we're going to have to upgrade you to VIP status, or your account will be frozen for like the next 380 days or something like that. And so they'll say to get to the VIP status, you'll need to invest an additional $40,000. And then you'll be moved over to the platform of CointreeVIP.com, which is exactly the same. And regardless, when you go to that platform, you're still not going to be able to withdraw your funds. So keep that in mind. These are all indicators that it is part of a scam. Now, the reason that the scammers had asked you for your driver's license, your passport, is because they know that you're getting to the point that you're going to realize it's a scam, because they're never going to release those funds. You're never going to get access to them. And it was all smoke and mirrors. So they asked for that information because they're going to sell it on the dark market. And what they do is they sell it to other scammers involved in cryptocurrency, and they will identify you as being a victim of a cryptocurrency investment scam. So other individuals will be likely to target you because they knew that you fell victim once. They will also have another scheme set up that individuals will contact you pretending to be cryptocurrency law firms, telling you that they can help you recover your lost funds. Be advised that no one can help you recover your funds unless they are a legitimate law enforcement service. So a law firm on their own is not going to be able to seize your funds and return those to you. So that's just another way for them to get you to pay for an additional thing and get as much money out of you as possible. So cryptocurrency is a trending crime. In 2024, it resulted in about 9.3 billion in losses. These are just some statistics, and I'm not going to bore you with all of that. What I really want to focus on, though, is reporting. So here is the email address that you can email if you feel you have been a victim of one of these types of scams to the Secret Service. It's the cryptofraud@uss.dhs.gov. And what you want to do, if you go to the IC3.gov to file your report, you want to be very detailed with the information that you are providing. I can't tell you enough how many times I see someone has filed an official complaint, but none of the information that they have provided is really beneficial to us. So if you're a victim of a cryptocurrency investment scam, you want to include dates and times of your transactions. And anytime you do a transaction involving cryptocurrency, you're going to get a transaction hash, and there's going to be a deposit address where your funds are going. Anytime you do that, you want to make sure that you include the transaction hash and the deposit address and the amount of funds that you sent. So that is the very much, like, if you cannot remember to include anything else, you definitely want to include those two items. If there's only one item that you can include, just include the transaction hash. So make sure that's included. Then you have the option to go into more specifics. A lot of people never include the domain that they were a victim to, but it's very important, because if you include the domain, we know 100% that you're linked to a specific scam. Through that scam, we are able to link you with others. And in cryptocurrency, a lot of people think, oh, I lost $40,000, and that's a lot of money for an individual person. It really is. But when it comes to cryptocurrency investment scams, generally, if it's not in the millions and we can't link it to other scam victims, then chances are it's not going to be fully investigated, just because our resources are depleted. So you want to include as much detail as possible so you can get involved in one of the bigger investigations. So another way that we can work on that is, if you provide the domain information, you may view it as one domain, but we are able to link that specific domain to other domains that are involved with the same scammers. Currently, we have one case that we've been able to link over 163 scam domains all to the same cryptocurrency investment scheme based off of registrant data and things like that. So that's also very important to include. I see a lot of times that victims will give us a description of the individual. They will say, John Smith was my scammer. This is what he looks like. We FaceTimed, and they will give me a full description of the individual. They'll try and provide me a physical address that the person provided. Be advised that even if you are FaceTiming an individual, that does not mean that you are really dealing with that individual. With developments in AI, these scammers are able to manipulate it and seem like you are on a real live FaceTime call with an individual that is not the person that you believe it to be. So just keep that in the back of your mind. I can't tell you how many times I've had victims arguing with me, telling me that they know who their scammer is. I've had victims reach out to individuals, contact their wives, and that individual is actually not involved in the scam at all. Their identity was stolen by the scammers, their photos were stolen offline by the scammers, but that individual themselves really wasn't involved in the scam at all. It was all AI using the information they were able to obtain from that individual online. So that information isn't as pertinent as if the scammer gives you a telephone number. Most of the time, these scammers are going to try and off-ramp you from email, regular phone call communications. They're going to try and get you to transition over into WhatsApp or an encrypted chatting platform. So you want to document the phone number that is attached to that WhatsApp account or whatever encrypted platform it is. And you want to include the dates of communication when you started dealing with that individual on that platform from, January until April of 2025. You want to include that information because that's very important for law enforcement. Excuse me. Another thing is they will give you email addresses. So it may be johnsmith@gmail.com. You want to include that email address because a lot of the times when they're using Gmail, they will have recovery information set up with the email address, a recovery phone number, a recovery email address. Sometimes it might take us, 3 or 4 emails, but eventually somebody will slip up and they'll include something legitimate in that recovery information that could help us get onto the right track of who the scammer actually is in your case. So you want to include all of those details. Another thing that I have found that a lot of cryptocurrency investment scam victims do not include is we have seen a rise in individuals that have received items from their specific scammers. Sometimes these items are traceable. So if you're ever a victim and someone has ever sent you a package or you received anything, please let us know. You need to include that information. And I can't tell you how many times victims leave that information out, but it's very, very important because if they're sending you an item, that means that item was purchased somewhere, which means that it's linked to a legitimate payment source before it was sent to you. So that is another way for us to track those individuals. So that is pretty much the beginning to the end of a pig butchering scam involving real estate agents. But you just need to be very aware that, these are sophisticated networks. They can make up the names, they can make up the driver's license, they can show you screenshots of bank accounts and other items. So do your due diligence, look into a little bit. We do find that in these cases, when the scammer originally reaches out as well, they're generally not claiming to be from the area that they're looking to purchase the home. They're generally stating like, I'm from New York, I'm looking to purchase a home in South Carolina, I'm going to pay cash for that house. That house is valued at $1.5 million. So they always say that they're not really within that real estate area because they want to have reasons of why they can't come and see the house. So, and just be aware that, those FaceTime calls may always not be legitimate. And just, if you're not sure about it, or if it seems too good to be true, you should definitely slow things down, inquire, reach out to somebody. If someone is trying to get you to invest in cryptocurrency, normally the investors don't look for you, you go and find them. So, if somebody's really pushing you of how you need to invest and they're trying to rush you on an investment, that's another indicator that it is part of a scam. Okay, I know that was really quick and I talk really fast, so I do apologize. I wanted to see if there were any questions involving crypto fraud or this specific type of scam. I know that right now we have one investigation that has a little over 27 million from real estate agents that have fallen victim to these specific scams. So it is targeting, people within your realm and in your sector. And it's not just for small change. We've had victims that reach out that not only do they get scammed, but under the pressure from the scammers, they actually get their families involved. I've seen people lose their families' life savings, their parents, their siblings, as well as their own. It's very tragic, and we do not want to see that happen to anyone else. So please, any information that you get here, please feel free to share it with your family, your friends, your coworkers, and just get the word out, because the number one thing is a lot of people in these scams are highly embarrassed and they do not like to report. So if there's one step you need to take, it is making sure that it gets reported. If it's never reported, you'll never stand a chance of getting your funds back, and we'll never stand a chance at getting the bad guy.
Great job, Special Agent Tiffany. We've got some questions coming in.
Sure.
One of the first one that it's asking if there's suspicions, the realtor has suspicions about a contact. The Secret Service want them to contact you up front, maybe to try to set up a sting or something like that? Should they contact law enforcement right away if they have suspicions?
I would say start with local law enforcement first. But if you feel that you're at a point and they're providing you a domain or a specific place they want you to invest, by all means, feel free to email that crypto fraud at usss.dhs.gov. And what we can do is we can actually look into the domain, see if it's been reported as a scam, and get back to you and let you know. One other thing, Byron, that I would also like to point out is I recently spoke to a victim who had told me that the individual that started scamming him, I guess there is a like market leads website or something that you guys can use. You can pay for that. And it'll give you tips within your market area. The individual wasn't from South Carolina, but another state. So I'm not sure if it's something that you guys use in South Carolina. But he told me that he paid for the leads, and probably 80% of the leads that he received all ended up the same way, offering to pay cash. And he believes that 80% of those leads that were provided to him were all the same type of scammers. So please also be cautious of that. If you're paying for a service to get leads, it may not always be what you think it is. So, if you start getting people from marketing lead site or something like that, and they're all wanting to pay cash, and that's not something that's common in your area or common for a house over $1 million or something in the area, by all means, please let us know. We can look into that site that you're getting those marketing leads from, because it would be nothing for these scammers to target those sites or flood them or pay to have their information provided to individuals, and we would like to get that information as well.
That's very helpful because South Carolina Realtors obviously are using referral networks, and we can pass that to the National Association of Realtors. They can contact some of these large groups to let them know that there's some suspicions the crooks are using their services to contact. So that's a big deal for realtors, that these con artists, they dangle the carrot. Hey, I want to buy a house, an expensive house. I want to pay cash. So that's a carrot. And then what you're talking about, the pig slaughtering, they're fattening the victim up, maybe even some money comes back from their little crypto investments, trying to get the big crypto investment.
Right.
Questions is about the WhatsApp being used. Is that a red flag? I know you mentioned, is that a red flag if a realtor has somebody that says, hey, I want to buy a house, I'm geographically distant, I can only communicate via WhatsApp? Is that a red flag?
It should be a red flag, and I'm not saying that it couldn't be a legitimate buyer just because they're using WhatsApp or would prefer to use that. And by all means, I would say if you feel comfortable with it, you can communicate in WhatsApp, but just be advised with these scammers, as soon as it transitions over to that WhatsApp, they're kind of trying to feed you that, oh, you should really be investing. You should be putting in money here. Oh, I recently made this much on an investment that I made, and things like that. And these individuals will also feed on the victims by, you'll want to make a larger withdrawal. So say you took out a $500 withdrawal, and then you decide to put the money back in. And then you decide later you want to make a $10,000 withdrawal. Maybe they won't right away freeze the account, but they may say, oh, you need to put in X amount, or you need to do something to be able to get this 10% out. And it's not uncommon for these scammers to be like, oh, you don't have that money available right now. That's okay. I'll give you a loan and I'll put it into the account for you. And then you can just repay me at a later date. And that's all fictitious. It's all made up. They're not really transferring anything into your account. They're just manipulating that website to look like you have that money in your account. And so that's another ruse that these individuals will use. They're making it look like they're using their own funds to try and help you and assist you so that you will continue to invest in these scams. So that's just another thing to look for.
It's good information and kind of related to the what you're talking about, these lead referrals that these realtors pay for to get leads. One of the realtors asked, how far do they dangle this carrot? Do they actually sign a contract to purchase the home, or they just want to make contact you and then they instantly shift into the crypto investment scheme?
So a lot of times it's going to be a pretty instantaneous shift. It all depends on how comfortable they feel the trust buildup is going with you. So if they feel that you're skeptical and they're leery, it may take longer. Some people, they'll start throwing that out there within 1 to 2 days. Others, it may be a few weeks. I've seen people that dealt with their scammers for months before they decided to quote unquote invest into one of these scams. And most of the time they are not going to sign a contract for the house or anything like that, but there have been rare instances where I have actually seen a scammer put down $300,000 on a house to try and make the individual believe it, because the individual is investing that much money into the scam, they didn't want to lose them. So it wouldn't be unheard of for them to put money down, but that is very rare that they do that.
Understood. One of the questions I ask, because South Carolina realtors, they're used to dealing with people maybe overseas that are legitimate, buying sight unseen. The Charleston, the Greenville area is very popular. What are some steps that a realtor could do to try to figure out which of these leads, these potential sellers might be legit, which ones might be the crook? So there's some steps that you've seen people take that might be useful. The South Carolina realtors have a forewarn app, which is kind of an instant background check. Obviously, they could hire a private investigator. Have you seen any identification processes that might help differentiate legit buyers from illegitimate buyers?
I mean, you can run background checks on individuals. Like I said, some of these are a little bit more high-end sophisticated, so they may be actually stealing real individuals' identities to put that out there. But in a lot of the lower end cryptocurrency investment scams, the IDs that they provide are fictitious. So generally, if you run those, you know that the individual is not going to exist. But when it comes to the more sophisticated ones, it might be a little harder to sort out. But the thing that I would say is if you're dealing with a legitimate buyer, whether they're overseas, out of state, and just out of your geographical area, that buyer normally follows along. They provide you the documentation that you're requesting. I would imagine you don't have a very large variety pool of individuals that are claiming to be cryptocurrency investors and making their living with that. So I would just be cautious of anyone that's like, oh, do you accept payment in cryptocurrency? Oh, I'm a cryptocurrency investor. That's how I've made my fortune and things like that. Just proceed with a little bit more caution with those individuals. Do your extra due diligence on those, because the whole thing is they want you to believe that they have that experience and that expertise. You're not going to trust a plumber with your life savings to invest it somewhere. So they're generally not going to say that they're outside of the financial sector, and they're generally going to make it seem like they are professionals in cryptocurrency because they want you to trust them with your investment. So that would be the biggest red flag out there. Is when they start talking about that and how they want to pay with cash. And then, when they start trying to nudge you into making that investment, then those are all very large red flags, and you should kind of slam on the brakes, slow things down, and proceed with caution from there.
Good answer. And then one of the questions is, why do they use the WhatsApp? It's because it's encrypted, right? Or there's some other
Correct.
advantages?
Yeah, mainly because it's encrypted and they think that it'll be harder for law enforcement to get access to those communications. So that's why they try and target those.
And then one of the questions. This is changing topic slightly. We mentioned at the beginning about the fake seller. Are there people at Secret Service working on what this is, Tiffany? Somebody pretends to be a vacant landowner in South Carolina. They're basically stealing the true owner's identity. Is Secret Service, are you aware if Secret Service has a division that's looking into that?
So we don't have a specific division for that. We do have individuals that are in our field offices that are investigating those types of crimes. If you feel that you have something like that going on in your area, by all means, you can, even if it's not cryptocurrency related, you can reach out to the United States Secret Service, and we can always put you in touch with an agent in your district that would be willing to look into that for you.
And this is a tragic story. Here's somebody that knows a victim. So the victim was an elderly lady that lost $60,000. She's filed a report. She got a cash line in her home and put 2 deposits of $30,000 each into Bitcoin machine to a man that called her weekly to invest. Says she filed a report. So
Yes.
just reemphasize, call law enforcement, ic3.gov. That's tragic.
Correct. And most of the time, if somebody's directing you to a Bitcoin ATM to deposit funds so that you can start trading, I would never do that. I would not encourage others to do that. Generally, you're going to start off with a legitimate platform. The reason they want people to use those Bitcoin ATMs and these type of scams is those are for the individuals that are not very computer savvy, and they don't think that they can convince them or walk them through or get access to their computer to set them up with a legitimate crypto account at Coinbase or Kraken or another exchange to get the actual funds into cryptocurrency. That's why they want them to go to an ATM, because all they have to do is put in the cash. They can scan a QR code, which will have the deposit address on it, and then that goes to the account of the scammers. So that's the easiest way for them to get elderly people and people that really don't have a good knowledge of computer systems to get the cash onboarded into crypto.
And then we mentioned it, but one of the realtors wrote that they have legitimate buyers that follow this scenario. They want to buy $1 million homes for cash, and they like to use WhatsApp. So just be careful out there. Those are red
Correct.
flags.
There are people out there that can pay for $1 million house in cash, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing illegal about that if they want to do that. It's just raising the red flags, and if they're saying, oh, I'm a crypto investor, then they're trying to get you enticed into that. That's where it's starting to cross over into the gray area, and you really want to proceed with caution. And anytime someone is trying to get you to invest and you're just not 100% sure of it, by all means, be like, oh yeah, I'm thinking about it. What site would you recommend being the best site or the best platform to use? And they're going to give you a domain that they want you to go to, and then just be like, okay, I'm going to look into it and I'll think about it or something like that. And then you can immediately contact us, email us, and be like, hey, somebody's trying to get me to invest in this platform. Are you guys able to confirm if it's legitimate or not? And a lot of times, often, if people would just Google the deposit address the individual's giving them or the name of the domain that they want them to use, someone else has already reported it as a scam online. And if you just do a quick Google search of it, most of the time it's a red flag unless it's a newer domain that has been set up and it really hasn't been tagged as a scam yet, but you can always reach out to us. Another thing you can do to try and cover your tail is if they're giving you a domain that they want you to go to and they want you to deposit funds into, look and see when that domain was registered. A lot of these domains have been registered in probably the last 6 months to a year. They haven't been around very long. And if you see an investment site that, was registered in the last 6 months, I really wouldn't send my money to that site.
And a couple are kind of wrapping up before we turn it over to the other special agents presentation. They're kind of talking about, hey, we have legit buyers, but you could always say if somebody wants to switch to WhatsApp and buy $1 million property for cash, you could just, the scam is they get you to invest in crypto. So as long as you do the closing and then maybe talk about investment, as long the scam against the realtor is to try to trick you into an investing. So as long as you're doing a real estate deal and it's a legit buyer using WhatsApp and crypto and cash to buy through a closing attorney, that's legit. So you would just, if somebody brings up investing, just say, hey, I'm not interested would be a safe answer right now. Or we can talk about this after you close, maybe would be a good.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. Like I said, this won't cover all avenues because every criminal adapts as they go. So they'll continue to try and find ways around that. But the scam isn't actually dealing with the property that they say they're trying to buy or even purchasing it if they want to go that far. Let them go as far as they want to go. If they want to end up buying that home, good for you. You close the deal. But at the end of the day, what they are trying to do is get you to invest your own money to make you a victim. And that's all we want to do is raise enough awareness so to draw the line there and say, no, thank you. I'm not interested in investing at this time.
Super. That's fantastic information. Too good to be true. Too good to be true. And then I guess your colleague, Alan, would you like to take over the presentation at this time, or Tiffany, any other closing thoughts?
Sure. And in closing, I would just say if you ever have any questions or concerns, or you feel that you, family member, anybody has been a victim, by all means, reach out to us at the Secret Service. We'll do everything that we can. And here is Alan, and he's going to go over BECs with you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Welcome, Special Agent Allen. Thank you for joining us today. This is great information.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Apologize, I'm trying to pull up my part of the presentation real quick. Just But I'll do my introduction while I'm waiting for that. So my name is Alan Otterson. I'm a special agent with the Secret Service, and I work with Tiffany here in our Investigative Operations Center in DC. Specifically, I do the fiat currency side of the house. So we refer to ourselves affectionately as the BEC desk, mostly because that is our big ticket fraud. However, we deal with all fund transfer frauds. So everything from business email compromise to romance scams to the stuff that I'm going to talk about now, which would be real estate, mortgage fraud, BECs, that type of stuff. So I'm not sure the statistics for the cryptocurrency side, but for the fiat currency side of the house, real estate is one of our biggest targeted sectors. I would say probably about 60%, pulled some numbers before I started this, of our incidents are targeting the real estate sector, which is massive. But this leads to the question of why, right? Why exactly is real estate such a common area of target for our bad actors? I would throw out a couple of theories. One of the biggest ones being that real estate is a lot of very large dollar transactions, and most of the time, the individuals that are involved in these transactions are relatively inexperienced. And I say that, as someone who has only bought a couple of pieces of property in my entire life. I understand that real estate professionals do this every day, but the buyers and the sellers don't typically have the institutional knowledge that the real estate professionals do. And depending on the laws of an individual state, which vary significantly, there can be 1, 2, or 10 individuals involved in a single transaction. So, whether it's the buyer and the seller and their agents and their brokers and their attorneys, every single one of those individuals that you add to this transaction is another potential point of compromise. So we see this area targeted heavily for that reason. Again, that lack of experience of the buyers and the sellers, as well as the sheer number of vectors into a particular transaction. In particular, with business email compromise, the bad actors target the organizations that are trying to conduct these transactions, right? So they're typically going to go after the real estate agents, the brokers, the title companies, the attorneys that are doing large amounts of these transactions. That is not to say that they do not target individuals, because we do see that relatively frequently. However, the vast majority of these are started by some form of compromise of either, again, a title company, which is probably the most common that we see, followed by the real estate agents and brokers and the attorneys themselves. So this is just such a massive issue. So a little bit of statistics here. Last year, over 21,000 BECs were reported to the Internet Crime Complaint Center, which is, as we kind of talked about earlier, the government's main repository for reporting crime online. But the number of transactions and the number of compromises is severely underreported. For reference, my group gets around 200 to 300 complaints a month. Each one of those complaints that we deal with, we'll typically talk to the bank about those fraudulent transfers, and we'll find between 2 and 10 additional victims that sent funds to the same exact bank accounts that aren't even aware they're victims yet, or maybe aware that they're victims, but chose not to report it for one reason or another. Whether that is embarrassment, they don't want to let anyone know that they were a victim, whether it's a family member or if they're a business, they're shareholders. I had a nonprofit entity that was the victim of a BEC last year, and they actually refused to identify themselves as a victim. They refused to testify at sentencing for the individual they arrested, purely because they're a nonprofit and they didn't want their donors to know that they had lost money to a BEC scheme. So these are floor numbers. The actual number of BECs is 5 to 10 times higher than this.
Hey, Alan. Hey, we're still seeing the old presentation. Did you pull up the new one?
I'm just gonna help him here. Hold
Okay,
on.
yeah. Sorry about that.
I thought you were sharing the window, not the.
Well, you have to go in and do it, this you.
Yep.
Right now.
I thought you were sharing the screen and not the.
Oh, no, sorry.
directly. Sorry.
Oh, perfect. All right. Thank you.
Hold on, maybe. There we go.
There we go. Okay. Sorry about that. I apologize. I was looking at the screen that I thought was showing, so sorry about that. But either way, this number is much higher than the actual reported numbers. And again, the losses, these are a floor. We deal with billions of dollars in loss every year. And again, this is a huge issue specifically for the real estate sector. So what exactly is a business email compromise? Well, essentially some bad actor gains access through any number of means, whether it's a phishing email, whether it's stolen credentials that they purchased off the dark web. They gain access to a business's or a person's email, and they use that access to essentially begin this sophisticated social engineering campaign that they use to either create a transaction from thin air or intercept a transaction that was already going to occur. So in the case of real estate BECs, what we typically see is a buyer is going to send their deposit or their down payment to purchase their property, and someone gets into the title company's or real estate agent's email account and then redirects that payment. They send separate instructions to a fraudulent bank account to have those funds sent there rather than the original legitimate account. Again, this does incorporate some level of network intrusion, but most of this is simple social engineering, right? The bad actor takes the time to get to know the company and the person. We call it the dwell time. So they'll spend time in your email account looking to see who you communicate with, how you communicate with them, and how you conduct your normal course of business. So they'll watch you for days or weeks and sometimes months, depending on the complexity of your organization. And they'll determine, this is the person that is in charge of sending payoff letters. So this is where any kind of payment instructions need to come from. And from there, after they've identified the players involved and they identify a particular transaction they want to get in the middle of, they will then get to the actual active spoofing. So they'll usually create a fake domain or a fake email address or both, and use those to pretend to be the individuals, of interest here. So let's say you have an accountant at your title company or an accountant at your real estate brokerage, and that individual normally sends the payoff letters. They're going to find that individual's information, and they're going to create a fake domain and a fake email address associated with it that are designed to mimic that individual's email address. And they'll send from that fake email a fraudulent payoff letter that they've altered. It may look very similar to the original. It may have the same letterhead, but they've just photoshopped the account number and the receiving bank. And from there, those instructions will be sent to the buyer, and that money will be sent to the bad guy's bank account. Most of the time, these transactions happen before closing. So you'll send your deposit, well before you sit down to actually sign your paperwork, whether that's, days before or weeks before, depending on the timeline. And in that case, the seller may never or may not know that they haven't received the funds until day of signing. And by that time, the funds are long gone. So one of the key points I'd like to make here is early detection and early reporting. The earlier that the victim gets in contact with law enforcement, the more likely it is that we can recover funds. The main priority of my group here at the Secret Service is to recover stolen funds for victims. We consider it a win if we just get your money back. However, we do actively try to go after the bad actors. That is a little more complicated than just stopping the money, though. So it usually takes more time. But we do try to very hard to get the money back, and any reports that we get, we run out completely. So if you send $100,000 to Bank of America, we're going to reach out to Bank of America and try to get that money back. And if they don't have it anymore, we're going to continue to follow those funds until we can no longer get to them. And that usually includes some kind of foreign transfer or transfer into cryptocurrency. So now, what can you do in this space to minimize your risk? I would, in general, recommend all enterprise email services incorporate multi-factor authentication for all web applications, anything that is critical for your function as a business. Whether you're an individual, real estate agent who is operating off of their Gmail account, that's fine. Google does offer two-factor authentication as part of their standard suite of security features. So please, I know it's annoying at times, but two-factor authentication could cut down on so much of this unauthorized email access, and we wouldn't have these incidents to begin with. Again, if you're a more complex entity, larger business, a list of trusted devices that that should be able to access your systems, whether it is company provided laptops and phones, or phones that are or computers that are brought by your employees, but become registered with the company, and the IT company or section knows that these devices will be connecting to their systems so they can whitelist them. Similarly, geofencing IP addresses. I cannot think of a legitimate reason why a random MTN IP address from Nigeria should be accessing the real estate email system of a company in South Carolina. I'm sure there might be a legitimate reason, but for the bulk of users, that shouldn't be the case. And it's relatively easy to implement these IT security parameters for whoever the IT professional is for your company. Again, same with blocking, anonymizing, or VPN IPs. Unless you have a very specific reason to be using a VPN or an anonymizing service, these should not be allowed to access your systems. Logs are a big thing for us. I mentioned that dwell time earlier. If an individual, you know, gains access to a system and then watches you for, you know, 2 or 3 weeks, the standard logs for Microsoft 365 is only 7 days. So if they watch you for 2 weeks, then we have no idea when they gained access and how they gained access. So make sure your logs are set for an extended period of time. And then the kind of the last fail-safe really is calling a trusted phone number and talking to someone to actually verify payment information. And I know this is a little easier said than done, particularly for people who do tons of transactions every day, but that can really save so many of these. Virtually every single incident that we deal with could have been avoided with a phone call, rather than, you know, blindly trusting the email instructions that they got. You know, we could have prevented those funds from being sent. So now to talk a little bit about the other types of scams, BEC again is our big ticket item. They're usually the much larger dollar amounts, but we also deal with all other types of fraudulent funds transfers, including things like the seller impersonation scams, the Craigslist or rental scams, and you know these have very similar base issues. Again, most of these are just being social engineering. You can use that same thing for cryptocurrency investment scams as well. This is all social engineering. These are all just different takes on it. However, for the rental scams, typically the bad actors are going to create postings on a variety of forums. I call them Craigslist scams, but they, you know, Facebook Marketplace, any other types of social media, message boards, local forums, that kind of thing. People advertise houses and apartments to rent. From there, the bad actors will usually ask for deposits or fees for background checks and that kind of thing through some kind of instant pay service, usually Venmo, Cash App, Zelle, that kind of thing, and take the money and run. These are usually lower dollar amounts, but they do happen in much higher volumes. So they post one ad, they might have, you know, 100 people reply to that ad looking for somewhere to live, and then they get, you know, even 20 of those 100 people to send money. Well, if you know if it's $1,000 for a deposit, that's $20,000 they made for one ad. So this is very low risk, high reward for them. But they typically go online and search for, you know, apartments that are currently being listed, and know that they know are vacant. This way, if an individual shows up to that particular place, that they won't find anyone there. Seller impersonation, same thing. These individuals will typically, however, engage with an actual real estate agent or broker, and they'll use that to add legitimacy to the transaction. Some of the more complex versions of this involve actually stealing the deeds from the owners of the properties. There are some states, I think Florida is one of them, where the clerk cannot legally refuse deed changes that are submitted to the court. So someone walks up with a quitclaim deed and that has been filled out fraudulently, even with, you know, fake notary involved. They have to accept it. There is nothing they can do about it. So they'll take those deed changes, and now that person no longer owns their house, or they've got to fight in court to get it, and they don't even know. So again, these are the more complex ones. Some of the simpler ones merely involve, you know, pretending to own the property, but there is a pretty significant uptick in the actual use of or like malicious use of deeds. So. Looking at the numbers, 2024, there were not over 9,000 real estate fraud complaints. This does not count BECs. This is just these types of scams themselves for about $170 million of loss, which is not nearly as big as the 2.7 billion for BECs, but that's still a pretty large number, especially considering the average dollar amount for those transactions is much lower. What can you do to avoid these? Please be diligent updating all of your listings and property information, anything that you're doing if you're a real estate company that also does property management, please make sure that all of your listings and rentals are up to date. If you are engaging with someone to sell a property, please make sure that you're going through and looking at the tax records for the property to make sure that you're dealing with the individual you should be dealing with. And again, Tiffany already spoke about this, but someone's solicited your services on WhatsApp or Telegram or however it is that you're communicating with them. A little extra due diligence would go a long way in these scenarios. And I feel like I shouldn't have to say that. I feel like a lot of people probably on this call are like, oh, of course I would try to identify the individual I'm speaking with. But I talk to seasoned escrow attorneys every single day who've only spoken to their clients on WhatsApp and consider them to be legitimate people, and they still launder millions of dollars for them. So please do your diligence. If you're dealing with someone that you've only spoken with online, whether it's email, WhatsApp, Facebook, whatever, we operate, all of us in general in daily life, that people are acting in good faith. These bad guys are not, which leads me to my next point. Any documents that you get are easily forged. Please, grain of salt, take anything that you get via email, any scanned copies of passports or birth certificates or driver's licenses or property documents, anything that you get, take it with a grain of salt unless you physically see it in person, because these things are very easily photoshopped, and the bad guys know that, and they know that, again, everyone else is operating in good faith, but they aren't, so they take advantage of that trust. One of the other big red flags is any kind of urgency to a transaction. I know it is legitimate that someone may want to sell a property short notice because they need money or they need to get rid of it for some reason, but any added sense of urgency, especially if you're adding that urgency via a messaging application, if it's someone that you've never met in person, those red flags should compound to make your radar go off and try to avoid these transactions. So I think that's all I had. But in terms of reporting any of this stuff, please, this is my my office's email address. This goes to our my whole team. So if you have any instances of any of these funds transfer frauds that are fiat currency, please by all means send them to becdesk.jioc@usss.dhs.gov. Please also file an IC3 complaint. That is our main repository, is the government for all complaints, and we like to get as complete a picture as possible. But if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to the router, or my personal email address is down there as well. Reach out to me and I'll see if I can help you out.
Thanks, Special Agent Allen. Great job. For my own education, what is fiat currency? Is that the same as like counterfeit, or is it something different?
So fiat is any legitimately government-backed currency, right? So the US dollar, the euro, those are all fiat currencies. I jokingly refer to cryptocurrencies as fake money. I'm sure there are some people in this room that don't agree with me, but US dollars are actual currency backed by the government. So I deal with actually tracking down those US dollars.
Super. And then when you guys are talking about these crimes, you guys have hinted at it, but these are very organized criminal organizations, correct? And they could be in the United States or overseas. Is that accurate?
So most of these bad actors, the guys behind the computer, are overseas. They are sometimes in the United States, but they do have to have a domestic presence. The laundering side of the house is frequently located domestically, and we do have a lot of luck arresting those people.
In these organized criminal, is there any linkage between like the drug trade or any kind of illegal activity? Are these organizations? These are tentacles, right? They're kind of interrelated in some ways.
Yes, especially when COVID happened, a lot of organized criminal elements kind of branched out away from their traditional guns, humans, and drug trafficking. This is easy to do, and there's very little overhead involved. It's just a computer. Anyone who has access to a computer can perpetrate these frauds. You don't have to be super technically savvy to do this stuff. So those organized criminal elements have certainly branched out. So if you send money to these, there's a chance that you are also supporting, foreign terrorist organizations or foreign criminal elements. So just keep that in mind.
And then for prosecution, some countries, I guess, are cooperative with the United States law enforcement, maybe some are not. Is that a factor in catching some of these bad actors?
Yeah, the bad guys definitely know who is friendly and who isn't. However, a lot of the friendly countries are places that they want to go. We actually arrested someone last year who was vacationing in France because they are a very friendly nation to us. A Nigerian individual who traveled there for his birthday, and we picked him up when he was leaving the airport. So we definitely can't arrest them overseas. There are some countries that we have issues with. A lot of Southeast Asian, West African countries, Central American countries that are hotspots for this activity aren't necessarily friendly or helpful to us. But again, these people would typically travel somewhere and they don't have a necessarily inclusive list of the places that will work with the US government. So
Super. And then you mentioned it, but if somebody's a victim of wire fraud, a buyer gets an email that says wire, $100,000 for your closing. Hang on, the dog's barking, but what should they do when that happens?
So any reporting, even if you haven't actually fallen victim to anything, reporting to law enforcement should be the number one priority. These bad actors are very prolific, and one individual can send out tens of thousands of emails a day using automation. And every single incident that we have reported to us, even if there's no loss, can help us kind of triangulate, where that guy is and who he is. So the more data points we have, the better.
Great information. I'm looking into the chat. Does anybody have any questions for Special Agent Otterson? And we're right at the hour, so great timing. Thank you, Special Agent Otterson, Special Agent Laura. We appreciate it. Thanks to Mike Christ, who's always handling the tech end, and Sharon Stone, who handles the marketing. And a question came in. It said, when we report, it's via email, correct?
Correct. That email address that I have, the one that Tiffany showed earlier, you can just send those complaints directly to those email addresses, and someone from our teams will address it. You can also alternatively, call your local Secret Service field office, and they can also assist you. But those emails are relatively simple. So.
And I'm just looking to see if any other questions come in. I put the email in the chat. There's some comments saying, great job, very helpful. Thank you, very timely. This is interesting for you guys. It says one of the realtors said they're swamped with these fake leads. So it's happening in South Carolina, if that helps any of your feedback. And realtors,
Again,
if you see, go ahead.
If you have those fake, any fake transactions, any individuals that you're dealing with who are potentially fraudulent, please either forward them to us or submit an IC3 complaint. The more of these we have documented, the better off. Yeah,
that's what I learned at the NER meetings from the Secret Service agent speaking there. You guys use this IC3.gov database, almost like a way to see patterns. You can search for names and look for repetitive and help build your case. So the more information the realtors put into IC3.gov, that helps you get the bad guys, correct?
Absolutely.
All right, and then there's a bunch of coming in saying thank you, great job, we appreciate it, and this has been recorded, will be posted for later viewing. Thank you, Special Agent Otterson, Special Agent Laura, we appreciate it, and turn it back to Mike to shut it down. Thank you, realtors, for joining.